In today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to carve your own stamps so that you can make your own note cards like these, or wrapping paper, gift tags, book labels. There's tons of uses for these little stamps. So this project is actually from the Crafty Little Club March 2019 kit, and it was Pi Day themed. So all the templates that are included in the kit seen here are pie themed. And, but you know, I've included extras of everything in the kit so that if you really love this, you can make some, you know, go wild, make your own templates, do whatever you want. So the first thing that I want to go over is just the materials and the tools that are included. So the first thing is the carving material, and that's linoleum, hence the name lino block cutting. What I've provided in the kit is this unmounted linoleum, so it's pretty thin. And linoleum also comes like this, where it's mounted to a wood block. The wood block is nice if you're sort of well practiced and know that you're going to be making something that you're going to use a lot. So maybe a stamp that is going to be something that is a label for something that you're going to be using repeatedly. Or if you're going to be trying to make artwork and you want to try to be able to get like a really even pressure. The wood backed is a little bit easier for that. But the disadvantage of the wood backed is one, that it's a little bit more expensive. So when you're learning, it's nice to just try on the unmounted so that the materials are a little cheaper. And then two is that the wood blocks just, you know, you can't really cut those easily. Whereas with the unmounted linoleum, you can just boop, cut with your scissors. And if your scissors don't go all the way through it, you can just score the linoleum and then cut through that backing mesh. So that's the cutting material. I've provided you a larger piece than this in the kit, but all we're really going to be using right now is I've cut one down to the size of my template right here. The second thing that we're going to be needing that's essential is, of course, our carver. So this comes in two pieces that I've included, the handle and the blade. And there's actually a lot of different blades available. The ones that I've included are safety blades to help you to keep from cutting your fingers, which if you're anything like me will be useful. But these ones, so there's this sort of, it's hard to see, but little V or bird-shaped end. That's actually your cutting end. There's different shaped cutters though for making wide grooves, smaller grooves. So depending if you want to do just sort of carve away a large amount of material for a background, or if you want to actually do some sort of more fine line work, you'll want different types of blades. So if you find that this really speaks to you and you really love lino cutting, you've got the handle, that's the more expensive part. The blades are relatively inexpensive. I recommend you just get yourself a set of assorted blades and try them out. It's a lot of fun. So there's the curved C-shape end, and then you'll see, oops, sorry, I'm not sure if that was on camera. There's the curved shaped end there, and then you'll see here, hopefully that's showing up. Okay, there's like a little crescent moon. You just insert that, and it's just, you know, the handle just rotates righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So just twist it on as tight as you can, and you're ready to cut. So for these projects, first of all, I recommend that you take a little scrap piece. Like I say, I provided extra. Take a little bit of scrap piece and just try various pressures of the blade as you're cutting to see what makes what kind of line, and so you can get a feel for it before you actually try making your patterns. So to make your stamps that are included in the kit, there's sometimes a little bit of sort of leftover linoleum, so just kind of pick that off as best you can. I've also provided this carbon paper, so there's a shiny black side and sort of a dull gray side. Put the shiny black side down on top of your linoleum. So we've got the smooth gray side of the linoleum facing up, the shiny black side of the carbon paper facing down. And then we'll just put our, oops, let's feel around here. We'll put our template on top, and then using a pencil, just trace all the lines of the pattern. And you can trace the background hash marks if you want to, but those are just to symbolize that that area is going to be cut away. So if you want to transfer that onto the pattern to sort of as a reminder to yourself, by all means, but ultimately it's going to be cut away. So the the main pie shape and the numbers inside are the main thing you want to transfer. Okay, so I've got my pattern transferred onto the linoleum using the carbon paper. And the main thing to remember is that we're not too worried about orientation with this because, you know, you're going to be carving it away, so you can always rotate your stamp a little bit. That said, I personally find it easier to put this stamp in an orientation that you would want it when you're printing it. So basically, you know, when you're actually doing your printing, you're only going to be seeing the back side. And so it's easier if you just sort of know, oh great, I want it like this centered on my paper. And so in this case, if I did that, then the pie slice would be at a bit of an angle, which is what I'd want. So you can sort of arrange that as you want, or like I say, you know, just draw it on and you can adjust when you're playing with it on paper. The other thing to remember is that because this is a stamp, none of your drawing marks are ever going to show up, which is nice. So in this case, I've got this 4, which I kind of overdrew, and it looks more like an H right now. That's fine, as long as I remember when I'm carving it and just sort of carve it as a 4 instead of an H, then that's going to look fine when it's stamped, so you're not going to be able to see that. And so likewise, you know, if you want to just sort of remind yourself of the background, you can have the hash marks there, just to remind yourself to cut that away, and that won't show up. So to get started, what I like to do is to get started with the main outlines first. So cutting around here, and I always find that the long straight edges are the easiest to start with. The thing to remember when you're cutting is, number 1, cut away from yourself. Like I say, these ones are the safety blades. They're not all safety blades, and it's just a good habit to get into. And then just be mindful of where your fingers are. So I'm going to be cutting this line, so I'm just going to hold it here, cutting in this direction. You also, I'm not sure if you can see the angle there. The angle's maybe, I don't know, the blade itself is almost flat against the linoleum, but the handle is at maybe a 30 or 45 degree angle. And you're just going to sort of dig in the blade with firm pressure, and then in a smooth, firm motion, you're just going to push along. And like I say, hopefully you'll do a test piece first, and you'll be able to get a feel for how much pressure is needed. Oh, sorry, I think I jiggled the camera a little there, but how much pressure is needed to get what type of line. Okay, so then we can move on to this one and just sort of do these firm lines. So what I like to do then for the curved lines, which are a little more difficult, I find it easier to actually rotate the linoleum rather than to move my blade when I'm cutting it. So basically I'm holding the blade almost still and then do my little cut, and at the end, I'll do another one so you can see, but it's like a little flicking motion to sort of stop the cut where I want it to. So I've put my blade in and I'm rotating the linoleum. I've stopped to where I want the cut to stop. I do a little flick to flick off the edge. I'll do one more there. So little push, moving the linoleum, and then a little flick at the end. And so you can continue around to do that. What I like to do is do the entire outline first and then start carving away the background. So you can just sort of, you know, this is a little bit more rough work, so you can just carve it away like that. And then just sort of remember that any of those grooves in between, I like to then go over those again and try to carve them down, because any of your raised edges are what's going to transfer onto the card. So you can see here on this example, I had some sort of raised little bits around here, and so those show up in the transfer. I personally think that's part of the charm of block printing, and that some of those little imperfections actually look good. So you can see it again here in the corner here. I actually like that look, but you just need to be aware that that happens. Okay, so now you can see I've got all that background area removed and carved away. So now it's just the pie itself that's left raised. And so remember, it's all the raised areas that is what's going to actually transfer onto the pattern. So in this finished one, you can see it's the raised area got the ink. And so when you put it on the pattern or on the paper, that's what shows up. To do the interior, it's a lot more detailed and finer lines are needed. And so as I said earlier, if the more pressure you use, kind of you'll get like a deeper line, and I also find it a little bit harder to control. And so what I recommend is using a lighter pressure for the interior. And so again, it's a good idea to practice on a little spare piece of linoleum first for this. So I'll do this line first. And actually I should also point out, you can see I smudged this up as I was cutting it, but again, that's no problem because no one's actually gonna see the line, the drawing. So again, just put the blade against the linoleum, the handle's at, I don't know, a 35, 45 degree angle, and just using light, even pressure. Oops. So that one I got off track a little bit. It's okay, just sort of connect back up and push along. So there we go. So we've got sort of that line on the piece of cake. So then again, as you get used to it, I'd recommend starting in this one from left to right. On the left side, it's the larger numbers. And so you'll want to just put your blade in and move, move the linoleum, do a little pick when you want to stop. You can put your blade back in, move the linoleum, and do a little pick. And the thing to remember when you're block carving like this is that you can always go back and recarve something. So if you do a trial stamp and it's not, you didn't carve deeply enough, so it's not really showing up properly, you can go back over that and carve it again a little bit deeper, but you can never uncarve. So if you carve away a piece, that's gone forever. So I recommend sort of proceeding with care. All right, so I've carved away all the inside, so you can see, I think it's a little tough to see, but I've carved away from the background a little more deeply than I have from the edges, but you can see that anything raised is what's going to transfer. And it might actually be easier to see on this one that I've already blackened. But anyway, so your next step, we're going to start stamping. So the thing to do is, there's all these little bits from the carved linoleum, little flecks, little whatever. All of those, let's see if I have an example here where it sort of showed up. So this was one of my test runs for the stamp, and you can see here there was a little fleck of linoleum that shows up in your transfer. So what you want to do is try to get your stamp as clean as possible. I mean, you could do a little damp cloth if you have like a little handheld cleaning brush, or even a blow dryer can work sometimes. Just sort of blow that out. I just sort of, with my hands and blowing it, get it out, and then hopefully you can get it clean. Oops, I shouldn't have had this one underneath it. Stuck it, just dumped everything onto there. All right, so the next step is to stamp it. And so I've provided these ink pads, which are a bit smaller than the stamps that you're going to be using, and that's fine because all we're going to do is take the ink pad and we're going to kind of smear it across the surface of the stamp. And so you'll be able to see, I'm not sure if it's showing up on camera, but you'll be able to see in person when you do this that the stamp surface looks wet. So you'll be able to see what's covered in ink. And as I said, I strongly recommend testing this out on just some scrap paper first. So you can see here I was doing some test runs because you want to be able to see if there's any areas you need to carve out more, anything you're not liking, do you have any flecks of linoleum in there? So when you're stamping, this is kind of like the carving. You only get one chance. You can't unstamp it once you've stamped it. So when you're putting it down, you want to make sure that you just put it straight down on the paper and drop it. So you can't readjust now, sort of assume it's stuck. But when you're making the stamp, you need firm pressure over it to make the stamp. So what I then do is just sort of with my hands, rub along it. But you want to be careful not to push down these sort of more flexible edges that you've carved away, because then that'll push them onto the stamp. So the other thing that you can do to help is get something like a jar with a flat bottom and use that to just sort of push along it with even pressure. When you think you've got enough pressure and you're happy with it, you can lift it up. And again, you don't want to wiggle it or move it around because that could potentially smear your image. So you just want to boop, lift straight up. And so in that one, I needed a little bit more ink and a little bit more pressure in the middle. But this is just a example, so we'll move on. So I've provided these cards in the kit that are, these are heavyweight block printing. Sorry, so that's, this is what I'm using here. It's actual printmaking paper labeled as heavyweight. And it's nice because, you know, if you're doing something casual like wrapping paper, you can just do that on craft paper. You can do it on cardboard boxes, which is a great way to reduce the use of wrapping paper around the holidays. But especially if you're trying to make like an art print, it really does make a difference to use the proper heavyweight printmaking paper. So I'm ready to do my good sample now. For the sake of video, I'm not going to go wash my hands, but you do want to take a look at your hands, see do you have ink on them. I've still got the carbon paper all over my hands from doing this. So I'm smudging, you know, I can see little smudges around the edges on the card. So you just want to be careful that you've got clean hands when you're getting ready to go. You'll also want to redo your ink. Make sure you've got a nice fresh layer of ink to get started. So just, oh, sorry, keep going off camera. So just smear it on there. And we're going to do the same thing as we did with our test. So we're going to just center it where we want it, place it down, and just hold it there with firm pressure. Push along all the raised part that we want to stamp. You can take also the stamp pad with the lid on it and use that to create some firm pressure. Sorry, I think as I'm doing this, it's shaking my whole setup here, and you guys might get a little video shaking, so sorry about that. Just want to make sure I get as firm pressure as possible. It can also help, it's a little awkward for me to do while I'm on camera here, but you can also, I find sometimes that standing up and pushing directly downward with a nice even pressure really helps to get the best image. And then the other thing to remember is that the images usually do show up nicer on the actual printmaking paper than they did on your test paper under the exact same conditions. All right, so then again, we'll just lift up. And there we go. And so on this card that I did, you know, I just took a big black pen and added a little note for people. You could sort of, you know, do one pattern on the outside, put the other one on the inside, play around with it. And, you know, I encourage you guys to play with this and make your own patterns. I'd love to see what you do with it. So definitely hashtag everything on Instagram with hashtag Crafty Little Club. And I can't wait to see your experiments. Have fun.